teachers, how are we involved in their personal life? We're supposed to, the best way to do it is to have a relationship, develop a relationship with our kids, knowing their in and outs, and being able to do home visitations with them, being able to talk about these issues. Peer pressure alone can target many forms of addiction and substance use and any issues that are coming up with our teenagers nowadays. So developing a relationship, educating them, having that close bond and saying, hey, people struggle with this, and if you're struggling, I'm here to help. And so it becomes more of a supportive, more kind of like, I feel more comfortable opening up to my coach or to my leader or to whomever. I am struggling with this, and I'm not the only one. And I think it's really important that we talk about it and we sort of help our Sunday school teachers be more engaging, more involved, having the kids be more engaged in sports and activities, especially church-related activities, being in a more positive environment, being them feeling safe, feeling secure, being able to go to someone when they're in need of help and recognize when they need help. So it's a lot of engaging, a lot of relationship building, it's a lot of educating them. So all of that.
And we're also planning that on we had also Dr. Olsen here. We've been to a few events that the diocese has held, either the sports day, other different events, and we've taken these opportunities to come and educate and just to build awareness. But there is a plan, God willing, to train servants in each church, and also to train kind of a general training to all servants to recognize some of these things. And this is why we're starting this. So it's an education, awareness / prevention that, God willing, in the upcoming year we'll be doing more.
And like I said, this presentation is just a draft. It's just an example of how we can present this to our youth, to our parents, to our congregation. It's a little bit of everything. There it is. And I have a lot of writing on here just because if this ever gets passed along, they know what I'm talking about. So just this side of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So substance use and mental health. I'm from mental health, so I'm a huge advocate for that, and they usually go hand in hand together. So the purpose of the presentation, like I said, is to educate others on the impact and the effects of substance use, as well as provide a better understanding and awareness of mental health and all the wonderful help and resources that's out there. So the topics that will be addressed, and I'm not going to repeat what David and Michael with substance use. So there's an overview of substance use, there's an overview of Free Indeed Recovery Ministry that we're trying to get up and running, and there's a brief overview of mental health and then resources in the end. So I'm hoping that wherever this presentation, it gets tweaked. It gets tweaked to the parenting. It gets tweaked to the youth in the Sunday school. And that the resources also tweaked. So I have a bunch of counties on there. So if this ends up going to LA County, we have a whole list of services for people who can actually get help. But then again, it's good to have somebody in each church to kind of provide that sort of referral too, because that's really important. I'm not going to go through all this, but just again, drug and alcohol, it alters the brain chemistry that we talked about, and it alters, our emotions, our perspective, our memory, the way we interact in the world, the way we function. Again, I'm not going to get into it because we already did. And then, again, it goes into details about how it affects our brain and our functioning. Statistics I have on there, I think it's important to include statistics. Like I said, it starts at age 12, and the main, the huge age range target is 25 to 29, which is a huge percentage of those who go into, treatments for substance use.
So do I understand that we're going to have an awareness program for parents, Sunday school teachers, clergy, that can be run for across the board of the diocese and in each church?
Yes.
So we have I'm expecting a team to call and say, hey guys, I need you to come, or you can call me and says, Abuna, can you come? Can you set up a meeting for parents? Can you do this and do that?
So we're hoping that, number one, I'd be more than happy to gather a team, but I'd want to know from the churches who's in the field that can be able to help and volunteer, and and that's why we're here.
Raise up your hand.
Anyone in the mental health, substance use, social work field.
I just want to, sorry
Go ahead,
Monica, to
Zainab.
interrupt.
Sure.
we were discussing in the free indeed program that we have to work in two different directions: treatment and prevention. Treatment is the people, they are already went through it, so that's why we are now in processing to register or to make a rehab Christian center or something belonging to the church. And we are now in the processing to get the license and all this stuff. The prevention we were talking is to have a curriculum or something to be taught to the families, the parents, the junior high, and we agreed about to start from junior high, from 12 years and above. But we are lack of servants, especially the specialists in the churches to do this job. Yes, we can work, put the foundation. I know that it's difficult for foundation, it's hard, takes time, takes efforts, but once we do the foundation, really easier. That's we go for the churches. The problem is with the congregation we faced. Some, when we go and announce for a day for prevention of drugs, a few people attend, like today. We spread the word all over the diocese churches, more than 40 churches, to invite everybody. But especially with the parents, even they are suffering from that. They don't want to show in front of the other people in the church they are attending an orientation about drugs. Might be people saw that, oh, they have a problem in their families.
Something I'd love to add to something you're saying, Grace, that I think there are all sorts of creative ways in which you can start to broach that barrier. A presentation sometimes, and I've had to learn this myself, sometimes a presentation is like step 3. Step 1 might be, here's something in your handout Sunday morning.
Yes.
We're having a resource fair about all sorts of things related to health. You can come get health screenings, you can come find out about health insurance, you can come find out about this. Also, there'll be folks covering mental health, substance abuse, all of that there. And then there are other things like this where you kind of start early, begin to get it on people's radars, and then you can start doing things like presentations. Something I should add in terms of finding volunteers or that kind of thing, in addition to folks like Monica and Marianne who have this skill set, I was remiss in not mentioning earlier, the project they oversee, Project Faith and Youth, is specifically doing this kind of work in faith communities. That's what we're funded to do. We're grant funded through the County of Orange to come out and do trainings for parents, trainings for youth, trainings for youth leaders, whether they be youth ministers, servants, whoever they might be, on all of the different ways in which they have particular influence on these issues. Even though I mentioned my funding limits me to Orange County, I'm happy to do, because I've been pushing for seeing some of this stuff happen in my own community, which unfortunately we're much way behind the Coptic community here. I'd be happy to come out and volunteer. Also, I can we are funded to do training, so I could bring some people to Orange County to train them to do what we do, and then they can go back to their own communities. So.
That's what the cooperation we need or seeking too. That's we have find right now a cooperation, because also we don't want to build from a structure, but we have to use what already, like your organization or your work or something, they already have a long time and establish it in this. So we need to use this in order not to start from zero.
I like the education piece, and we don't have to get so technical and detailed in what we're not educating them on clinical, like, I think the moral of the story is, yes, these are the consequences, these are the symptoms, and but the thing is, we need to the problem that I find, there's a barrier. You can provide all these wealth, but no one's gonna come forth and seek help, or no one's gonna feel comfortable. That is why, we gotta just talk about it, just casually, in our meetings, in a sermon, it's real, it's out there. A lot of people are experiencing it. You're not alone, and that's why it's so important to include it in everywhere. Basketball meeting with the coach and the kids, Sunday school teachers. It doesn't have to be so much formal, which is great, and I want that. The more, the merrier. But where can we do outreach in our very own? You guys know our community is tough to break through, and there's this taboo against mental health. I mean, not too long ago we had a couple of suicide in our own diocese. Like, that says something. And maybe if
the students died, is it?
suicide, not students, but congregation. And so,
Okay, well, that's because I'm hearing really good stuff, but I think Sayidna really hit upon the nail that is, how are we going to get our community to feel safe enough to open up about what it is that they're going through in their own family, because they don't want this person to know, So maybe this is something that we need to discuss further about how to get our community to let their guard down and to realize that we are all in this together and nobody's pointing fingers, and we're all here to help because Christ is in the midst of all of us, and Christ came for specifically for that.
right, and that's exactly where we need to start. We can provide all these information.
How can
So what's
we
your suggestion again?
get people to lead groups who are going to help people who are trained in being sensitive to listening to, and people who are trained or people who have that capacity to make people open up and feel safe and feel comfortable, and make it small groups. Make it very small groups with people who already know each other socially and already trust each other, not on 1,000, not like the whole congregation, but we're talking about smaller groups. People who are already familiar with each other and may know about what's going on with each other's family and let their guard down. Because we're talking about
Really sensitive topics here,
matters, as you said, of life and death.
I 100%
And
agree.
especially, especially also among our group, our congregation, we have some category, what we call it newcomers, the people they just immigrate and they don't know what is going around them. And it's very shame for them if their kids, they know that they started to do that. It's out of ignorance, like David example, and given some examples of in the schools they may distributed candies or something and so on for their kids, and they don't know, and then they found their kids, he becomes or she becomes an addict. And for our new Congress also to explain, so we have also to take the issue from this perspective, how to explain to those people it's not a shame.
Right.
We need to help you.
Yeah, an idea that we've had, we spoke to Sayedna last year, is to come almost on a kind of as a surprise, like, or not necessarily announce it before we come. And so we can come to churches and hey, after liturgy, we want everybody to sit, and they're going to. So I think just getting the word out and hearing it quite often, that already is going to start to work. Yeah, exactly. It's going to start to erase the stigma. Going to larger conventions like one of the Lamais convention, there's already a huge population there. We can engage them, even if it's a 10-15 minute presentation, just getting them to listen. That we are now building awareness. We're now talking about this. It's not a shameful thing. We're all going through this. Yes.
That's just surface level.
This is what.
David?
Can I say it in Arabic?
Go,
There
Brother.
is I don't know if only the parent attend this meeting. In our church, free language barrier. Even in this, I heard a lot of stuff very, very important. But surprisingly, I found that my kids know that more than me. They know all the kind of medicine, Xanax. Last week I had severe back pain. My son, he's in high school. Mama, do you want me call my friend bring some?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. I have phone nuts in the school. Everywhere. They know, the kids know each other. Who does that, who does this. So even if they attend this meeting, we need the kid to speak up.
Absolutely.
They know more than us. Can I it's very
parents talk. يعني it's not that all parents are afraid to talk about it or to get stamped as the kids is like that. No, some parents cry for help. Some parents say that the kids gather in their garage and they are having a gathering where they come and have shisha and put drugs there, and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so we need other Sayyidina, other than awareness, somebody in every church where Abuna can refer these people to.
We have this service. Dr. Onsi can talk about it. We have we used to have 800 number, and then after our group give, so because sometimes people shy to talk, so because they are worried if they talk may be labeled as a case, so we set up 800 number. And can Dr. Onsi give us his experience on that?
Yeah, I kept the phone for the whole year, and only one time they called me. They were asking about looking for Dr. Lazarus when I did the TV presentation. This is the only time they called me, and I kept the phone the whole year. Then I ended up disconnecting the phone. Regarding, I did 4 weeks talk for Knesset Pope Kyrillos. 4 weeks every Tuesday, about a couple years ago. But the attendance every time was 7 people. I did like a course for the whole month. And I even advertised it for Archangel. Maybe part of it because I did it on Tuesday, because this is the day I was available. Maybe the timing after hour was not right. But anyhow, the people who show up like 7, 8 people every time. And mostly they're the same people.
We had an idea that, you remember when we mentioned in the committee, that when I go to any church, so the bishop is coming, so I can tell the priest that I have a group, and today we're going to set up an education on the lecture or something, but we haven't yet started yet on that stuff.
But I want to speak to Dr. Unti, because here's the thing, yes, you're providing phone numbers, you're providing all these great resources, but the problem is it's not being used because we haven't dealt with the awareness piece. Yes.
I'm sorry, the discussion is going a little bit I think of my expectation.
Yes.
If the problem lies more for the 12-year-old and up, yes, parent awareness is good, but then we need to have specific training, as you've said, and this is something that practically, I would love to see, practically there is a specific training for the Sunday school servants, so that they can identify, refer, and then all these tools come in.
And in the curriculum of Sunday school, that's to be included. This is awareness.
This is I had an idea that we're going to talk to Bishop Kyrillos and make it part of the curriculum, that in order to be a servant, you have to be trained in this and this and this. And we can do the training in Orange County so that David, we could utilize all these resources from David, so he can train these servants and they can go throughout the diocese.
In year 2009 and 2010, I had a program called APOD run in Santa Marina Church, and the county elected, they gave me $10,000 to continue this. And so I'm saying this for 10,000, then it was replicated in the center and replicated in some other places. This is really, like what Dr. Zayed saying, monthly we have a parent meeting that the whole church will close every service. This is we have parents, we have kids, and we have other psychologists, and then we divide the kids into two. The kids, of course, know more than the parents, but then practically, again, we need to train people, and I think this is the way I have to go now, because enough with awareness, and never enough, but we need to step in.
Right.
So my suggestion is training.
I was just going to say, with all due respect, because we were talking about doing a question and answer at the end, and I think all of these ideas, I think the group seems to be in agreement. These are fantastic. But I'd love to let Monica finish.
Oh no, I'm opening up to everyone.
Oh, okay.
This is the part where we collaborate together and talk about how we can go about getting involved in our community. So I was talking with Sayyidina, like having that day convention where we split up, like you said, where we have the parents and then the kids separated. So we have a workshop, a day where it's educating them helping them with understanding what's out there, what resources they can provide.
If we're gonna have awareness program, related technical abbreviation, we don't understand it. I'm not a doctor. So what is that THC? What?
Well, so we're hoping with Sayedna that when we do these workshops or these day convention, that we do have an Arabic speaking someone who can also, and hopefully it'll be
what is the science? How to monitor my kids?
And that's exactly what I was
How
talking
to
about.
prevent them?
Right.
How I feel my kids need that. How I feel. Why they need to get hard. This is the most important. But presentation is excellent. But I need to translate it. I need to do something.
And that's the next step. Honestly, this is the next step. This is why we made this today. To start establishing a team, to start educating, and to start to build, and so we can start to do all these things.
So who are we targeting now?
Mary, you want to talk?
Yes, this is my question. Maybe this is naive because I'm not in this field, but like in school, for example, there's like...
Can you speak up, Mary, because we can...
So in school, for example, when the kids go to school, they know that if they see their classmate doing something wrong, they know that they can go to a teacher, they can go to a school counselor, they can talk to somebody who will be able to deal with what they're seeing. I think one of the issues now is that, as a servant in church, you see, the kids see each other doing these things, and the kid doesn't have anyone that they can go to tell. If they tell their parents,
I'm not gonna snitch.
yeah, if they tell their parent, then mom and dad are gonna say, I can't hang out with this person. If they tell their Sunday school servant, maybe they don't feel that the Sunday school servant is empowered to do anything about it, so then nothing will happen in that respect. And they themselves they're not empowered with the information to be able to deal with their peer, one-to-one, and tell them, like David was saying, hey, so-and-so by name, I think you should not be doing this. So maybe something that we can consider is creating that kind of systematic way that we can approach this problem. Because if every place and every community deals with it differently, then it's going to continue. And the kids, unfortunately, like social media, a lot of the problems that happen, the kids see each other doing it on social media, and it's very exposed. The kids are not shy about doing it. It's just a matter of, okay, when they see their friend doing it, is there a safe way that I can tell somebody who will be able to deal with it?
Well, we don't want to definitely rely on a Sunday school teacher who doesn't have the psychological background and able to kind of help them and make those kind of appropriate referrals, right? We don't want, especially if someone's depressed, like a teenager's depressed and suicidal, we definitely don't want to rely on someone who doesn't have the, experience and the skills and the, and the qualification to kind of appropriately approach and deal with that. So there, like I said, there should be some sort of liaison in the church who does have the appropriate referrals and resources and can help the priest and the congregation with these information. But as a whole, we need Sunday school teachers. We need these coaches because these are the closest people to our children. And we need them to be able to relate and have that close relationship and that comfort and that support and that, hey, if you're struggling, I'm here to help. And this is how I can help you by then referring to the priest, to the liaison at that church to appropriately make that referral and that, recommendation for treatment or whatever it may be. And then also including the parents, because you're dealing with minors now. That's a whole different, category, and how do we approach the parents about this situation. So yes, there needs to be a lot of training in different areas. There needs to be a lot of outreach. There needs to be a lot of, servants who are willing to come in and help in our own community. So,
Mike, I think what you're saying is great. But when, even God Jesus Christ, when he was incarnated and he started the service, he didn't have hundreds of people to start preaching. He started with 12, and then 70, and then so forth. So I think it's the same. It's the same thing. So if we have here enough people dedicated, or Abuna has the knowledge of other people who are dedicated, we can start with small groups, and then these small groups can become more.
And that's why we want your contact information so you guys can be able to be involved in the process.
So I think the program that we need to add on Abuna Shoy is that we need not lessons, but at least what do we do? Where do we start? like I'm an engineer. It doesn't mean that I have to be a doctor to help in the service. So yes, a doctor is going to be 10 times better than I am because of his medical backgrounds, but I can help.
But yeah, you can bridge them to that resource. That's the thing, that no matter what your role is in the church, you can bridge them to the appropriate treatment that they need. So,
like Chris Abuna Lazarus in our church, he used to specialize on those people. You go visit them and become friend with them.
Absolutely, that relationship.
So that's what I mean. A person who is in every church who...
That's the ultimate goal, to have one person, at least one person per church.
Yeah.
So we're building up to that.
But that relationship comes with the priests, the Sunday school teachers, the youth leaders, the coaches in the basketball that they play. You know, this is where the relationship, this is where they are able to communicate and talk about their stressors and their situations and how to get help. That's where you bridge them, you know.
If I could share an experience that I think might give some context for the group. In my line of work, I do not focus on mental health. I have a background in mental health. I've addressed mental health, but it's not my focus, as you've seen with substance abuse, primarily. I went out and did a presentation for a group of young people at a Catholic parish in Tustin. After giving that parish on substance use and on some other things, because I was working with that group a little bit long term, one of the young people, one of actually the kind of early 20s leaders, approached me and said, "Hey, can we talk for a minute on the side?" And she then proceeded to tell me about her crippling anxiety and depression that she had told no one else about. And so I was able to do two things for her. I didn't counsel her in terms of, like, I'm not a therapist, anything like that. I was able to say a couple things to her. I was the one to listen to her. I was able to say, what you're going through is not abnormal. At least 1 in 4 people deal with something like this, right? And then, which is a quick, easy, right statistic. And I was able to say, I know 2 things that might be helpful to you. Your youth minister at the parish, who also didn't know any about it. Do you know him really well? Yes. Do you think he loves you? Yes. Do you think he cares about you? Yes. Do you trust him? Yes. Great. Can we bring him in on this conversation? Absolutely. So we did, right? I gave him a call, we talked, and we connected. That 2 days later, I said, there's an organization called the NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I mentioned in my presentation. They have what they call, they have a line you can call to talk through some of these things. How would you like that myself and the youth minister sit with you while you call them and talk to them? So we did that. We sat with her, she gave them a call, she talked to them. She wasn't alone going through that. She talked to them, she got some information, she got a referral to a therapist, she was able to see a therapist. Nothing I did there is something that the average servant couldn't do in a parish. So to what Monica is making the point, I think this is kind of what I'm seeing from the whole group, there is a level at which everyone needs some kind of training. Young people, very basic level. And I think that includes, to Mary's point, one of the things I think is really important to include for young people is how to respond when a friend comes to you in crisis. Because one of the first people that a young person goes to when they're in crisis is any other young person who's the person least capable of dealing with that situation. But we need to leverage that reality, right? The other thing is parents, the servants in general, some kind of mandatory part of the training that they go through. And then identifying people in the parishes, and I would encourage the clergy to think about this, but the clergy have that they know what's going on in their parishes, they have that heartbeat, and that can be something that feelers can be put out. I know we keep talking about this room, and I think there's lots of levels of expertise here in this room that maybe could be used variously, right? But there are people within each parish who, if they heard this, they said, hey, what would you think about, as a service opportunity, supporting those, like being a link for those to various resources? They would love it. They would jump at it, right? And that training could be provided from folks like Monica, from Marianne, from Michael, myself, other folks who have this expertise in the diocese. So I think kind of hitting it at every angle at different levels. And I think a lot of that is actually already fairly available to us. It'd just be about meeting and kind of organizing those resources.
So I have a scenario I would like to share it with you. Suppose I have one of my Sunday school kids right now is using drugs. And when you're facing the parent denied the kids. and at the same time, he's offering the drugs to the other kids in the church. So what is your advice? Or how we can approach this case in general?
Well, one, so how old is the kid? 15. So legally, they can actually get their own treatment if they wanted to. If they wanted to get their own treatment, legally they can. They can without parental consent. But if they were to get medication, that's a different story. They would have to get. So my point is talking to the kid, understanding, what is this? Are they using substances? If they are, what does it? How does it serve them? How does it help them? And understanding understanding why they're using and figuring out if they need help, if they recognize they need help, and how we can help them and link them to getting that help they need. So, and then with that, if they consent to services, they can actually consent to their own services. But getting the parent involved is a whole different story. We would have to talk with the priest, and maybe the priest may know a different approach with the parents if they've already had that kind of a relationship with the parents, so we can segue in and introduce the topic and understanding what the parents' awareness are. But definitely with kiddos that I work with, I would definitely encourage them to speak about their issues and encourage them to speak about it with their parents, because, depending if they realize that they need help or not. So it really depends on the situation. I think I need more about what's going on with the kiddo.
Also, it's good to talk with them and develop some bonding, some relationships, so he can able to talk more about it too and see
No,
where.
the relationship exists.
Okay.
It's very well.
Can you refer him to a clinic? If you have a good relation with him, can you send him, well, I'm going to send you this doctor, we're going to help you. Send you this clinic, he can help you with this problem. Other thing you might see underneath problem at home, you might have some family feud. Sometimes they call down to him, he does, or deny the problem, he has no problem. So denial or confrontation and put him down, and maybe he has poor grade in school, maybe he has no friend. The way he make friends to offer drugs to the people, and that's he kind of.
Yeah, it is part of the school issue.
Then you need to refer him for full evaluation.
He opened up to you. He opened up to you, or you found out through some other way?
No, I found it through my kids, my boys. They told me about him, but I can share the story later with you. But I think, in my humble opinion, respect what Sayyidina said as well. I think we need Sayyidina to train the servant how they can deal with this issue, especially from the spiritual point of view, because you cannot rely on the priest in everything. That is for sure. The priest, he can't do everything. So now we have, in my humble opinion, we have to build the team. How can deal with this issue as a servant spiritual.
And then how can you make sure that he doesn't give drugs to the kids that are around him, and how can you get those drugs off of him immediately because of legal ramifications, among other things? I mean, he shouldn't be having drugs, he just shouldn't have it.
Yeah. If I can jump in there, a couple of things to that point. If you catch them with drugs, that's another thing. That makes it really difficult for the parents to deny there's something going on.
Right.
If you found a kid with drugs, right? That's one thing. Two, a big part of that question is fortifying the kids around him against substance use in general, right? Because there may be a kid pushing drugs in the church, right? And maybe happening. As you said, it's happening. You know where it's happening even more is at school. So even if it's not happening at church, it's happening at school, right? So that's, the location is not so much in and of itself the issue, other than we don't want bad things happening at church. We want church to feel like a safe place for people. But that's a big part of it, fortifying those kids. The other thing is if you have that relationship, there's a degree of that relationship, if it's good, if it's strong, to the doctor's point, that leveraging that. And part of that is setting certain expectations. That can start generally, talking to the overall, doing a session maybe in the overall Sunday school program about substance use, like a day or a Sunday, right? Taking a particular day, a particular class, talk about substance use and mental health and all of that. So that you kind of set a base level for the conversation, like we've begun a conversation. That's when you can start addressing certain things if you have that relationship. Like, hey, so and so, I am aware that this is happening. You know I care about you and I love you and I'm so happy that you're here. I love this about you. I love this about you. You contribute in these ways, so on. I know this is happening and I'm here for you if if you ever want help, but it also can't keep happening, right? So sometimes it can become a little bit difficult to think in our heads because we want to strike this balance between having a young person feel like they are unwelcome because of bad behavior, which is not definitely something we don't want in the church, right? We want people with bad behavior to feel like they are welcome in the church because that's the place, right? This is where the Lord can heal them. But at the same time, keeping it in a place where people can feel safe. So using that relationship to leverage and set that expectation. And then following up on that expectation. See if you continue to hear things, right? The people maybe you've heard things from say, hey, if you hear more, please let me know, right? Or telling them, hey, I would like to know from you what is fully going on, kind of thing. And going from there. When things continue on, you can start moving into, which could be a piece that is a little bit down the road from some of the things we're talking about. I think right now we could leverage professional opportunities through folks like Dee Dee Hirsch, through other treatment centers, what they call early intervention, right? So if something's going on with a young person, they're not currently strung out on drugs, but they are using drugs, they are providing drugs to the young people. There's a middle ground, what they call early intervention, where you can begin to do certain types of screenings, certain types of educational pieces and things like that. And you can make that a requirement in some way or another. Depends on the relationship that exists and what type of privileges they find from being engaged in whatever the activity is, right?
Dave, do you do training in this, David?
I don't have much, no, let's put it that way, no. It's available though. In particular, there's some connections to the Department of Education in Orange County. And so I'm actually myself looking to get trained. I'll see if it happens. But that I can find some of those resources and see how that can work out. Especially for folks who are already clinicians. Yeah. They can add that to their repertoire. Thank you. So in a medical context, you may move with Ashburn, right? So screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment.
I think it's important for like Sunday school teachers to be able to have that training in terms of how do we approach kids who are using. How do we not make them feel belittled or feel ashamed or feel embarrassed or feel guilty because these are things that they're probably feeling. So yes, it's really important with the way we approach them and communicate with them. And I think it's all about that, and it's about that relationship bonding, that peace, that trust, where it says, I care about you, I want to help you, and then they're going to be more inclined to hearing you out. I told parents, discipline works effectively if you have a relationship and a bond with your kid. So if you have a bond and a good relationship with your kid, they're going to most likely listen to you. So that piece, including the educational piece in the Sunday school curriculum, that's going to be, I mean, it'll definitely be so effective, and our kids will actually be more inclined to seeking help. But again, it goes along with the training and and all that, and in different levels of our church. And that's what I said. It doesn't matter what role you have in the church, whether you're a Sunday school teacher, whether you're a basketball coach, whether you're a priest, whether you're just the guy sitting next to another guy. All of these approaches are similar in becoming that curious, caring, loving person, but the way we go about reaching kids and reaching parents is going to be a little different, and that's where we get the trainings. And that's why, I want you guys to collaborate and present your ideas and what you've experienced and any testimonies, because this could be enriching to our training process. Yes?
I guess as a servant, one of the biggest issues that I faced with other servants is sometimes we get burnt out. I got burnt out from hearing how my kids are addicted or are struggling with pornography or whatever issues. And yes, I may refer them, but that doesn't relieve the burden off of my shoulders. And sometimes I don't know how to deal with that. I know in for a psychologist or a therapist, they have their own therapists that they go to. And I think that's something that maybe I feel personally that I'm lacking. Is who do I reach out to that knows how to handle that load of stress?
That's so important that you say that, because this is a sensitive and a huge topic, and yes, you might feel that burden, you might feel like, oh my God, it's pretty overwhelming. And I want you guys to know that you guys are not individually doing this. You're going to be working with a team at your church. I don't want you to feel like the responsibility falls on your shoulder. No, you are going to be working with a team. You're going to be working with hopefully somebody in the church who has a background inside, who can be able to help you and other referrals. And you're going to be working with the priest. You're going to be working with a bunch of people. This is a team effort. This is a team project. This isn't one person who's going to be dealing with the person who's going to be making all the referrals. No, you're dealing with multiple people in this team together, so you don't feel burdened and overwhelmed and burnt out. That's not what we want you to feel. That's for sure.
Two months ago, we actually had this conversation at the beginning before we started. Her and I were talking about what self-care looks like, right? In general, in our lives. I talked about positive coping strategies, right? Big piece to that is in any profession, in our lives in general, busyness is such an easy thing to happen, let alone add to that busyness in the context of service, all of the stressors of seeing the suffering of people we're dealing with, right? You know? So I think a big piece of the training can be for serving, and should be, is self-care. And knowing a big part of knowing when to refer out is also knowing I have reached my limits in terms of my skills, and also in terms of my emotional and spiritual capacity. The other thing I would say, too, that is an important piece to all this, and I think the clergy can do a fantastic job, and I know already have this skill set in a lot of ways of modeling, is being open about their own experiences. I suspect the numbers are lower for the clergy in the Orthodox church, especially the Coptic church, because I think they do, at least here in California, do a really good job of, I think, supporting the clergy, and a lot of the parishes have a handful of clergy, but clergy burnout is a very widespread thing in terms of across the board in religious things. So being able to speak to that, the clergy being able to speak about their own experiences, be able to share about that, as well as experiences related to mental health conditions, I think could go a long way. Yeah. Does that speak to your question? So. Yeah, so.
It's a great question, and actually, and it shows how great of a, and I want to talk about it, but it shows how invested you are as a servant and emotionally how much we go through. So absolutely something we have to, when we tackle these things, because these are huge things, and it takes a toll on us. I'm going through this right now with a person I've been working on for months, and helping them trying to get out of, and I was so emotionally invested, and just like that went back into it, and it's killing me. So I'm with you, and I understand. So it's definitely something we have to address.
And I think that he is a perfect example of what we need to have small groups of.
Yeah.
We need to have more of this. This, communication and honesty. I think this is a perfect example of opening up, because this is the road to healing. This is the only way that we're going to get healing is through honesty.
Let me bring
Don't you agree?
Because absolutely, for us as a newcomer, we have been here like 15 years. We're still new. See, we have high expectation from the servant, from the church. Why? Because we're new. We have no cousins, no relatives here. So when I have a problem with my kids, which one I go ask? I go to the servant. He's young age. He was raised here. See, I expect more help than him.
And more support. Yeah. Absolutely.
Let me bring the group to the center again, to the focus. What we're doing today is the Diaconia and Development Department is focusing, as Sayyidina said, on 6 aspects, and you will find this, if you haven't had this mark, Sayyidina has given it out. One of them is about the Free Indeed program, which is dealing with the addiction problem. And as Buna said and the team said, that there is an awareness program, there is a hope for a training program, and there is a place for a rehab too, which we need to deal with existing cases and prevent the future problems. I think the target group would be much better. Yes, we need to hear the
parents.
The parents. What's your name, a parent? Jihan. We need to read Jihan, but then we need to take Jihan's with compassionate listening, as you mentioned, Yemen, and then put it into perspective how we deal with this stuff, and give her the tools or the resources where to go, as Monica said. I think the point is that we've been listening in the discussion going on. We're going to take it to a next step. The next step for us is that I want to make sure that everyone is registered. Did you register your name, everybody? Phone and email. With the office of Abraham, Morel, and John. Where's John? John Pascal, and myself. We're trying to help organize administratively how things go. So we discussed that there will be a training day for the servants who are going to be working as leaders in the communities. Not necessarily, we don't need the parents at this point, okay? I'm not saying Jihan don't come. I'm saying I want you to come as a person who is representative, that you can be the resource person in that church that will help more expand the so please mark down June 2nd. June 2nd should be the day for training, and of course there will be further communication. That's why I want to make sure that your email, your phone number is within the office in the database. The second thing I want you to do is that for now you know that Abuna Ladras and Monica, do you have your number? Yeah, I need your info. To contact them if there is an emergency, like Mohab said, there is something that you need to talk with Abuna. Then if there is something, because these things are not going to stop, and we have been doing this all along, and we're going to repeat that, but there are steps that we go through, and we need your help. If you know, I think if you know someone that is in this arena or field in your church, and he doesn't know about this meeting before, please encourage them to join. Get them to, when you go to the website, there is a website that is put together for the diaconia and development. It's on the written here too. So you will find a link to send a message, okay? And even from the emails that is gonna be coming to you, send back a message. This message is gonna be read and then worked upon, okay? So June 2nd is the next day.
Where at?
We're not gonna, we didn't decide yet. Most probably, but we didn't decide yet. But this is not only gonna be only the people for dealing with addiction, other people, because there are bases that we need, as we said, training for servants, for Sunday school. Basically, there is a basic training that we need to give to everyone to make sure that we have the proper representation in every church. And then we take it further down in a series of training, awareness, visitations, plus the line for the what we're working for there. Yes.
Can we make it Saturday, please? Because Sunday is very hard.
It's a Saturday.
It's Saturday.
June 2nd. Saturday.
I hope we make it Saturday every time. Because today very hard to نصحى ودرس الساعة 7 وبعدين عنده شوية.
You have to give us free stuff to get you free indeed program. So
we don't want to tarnish our image. You're the part of our image and complain behind the scenes. We're them and us.